Well, we're looking forward to playing the best team in the country on Saturday. So explosive on offense. They're big, physical, powerful offensive line, as good as I've ever seen in college football. Defensively, they've got Nick Saban all over them. I've been playing in Alabama for a long time, and they're big, physical, run to the football, good in the front level, good at linebacker and the secondary, very, very skilled returners, and they're a really good football team. We're excited to see where our football team is at this point in time in the season against the best team in the country.
First up, we have Tom Murphy, the Arkansas Democrat Gazette.
Hey, Sam, I'm wondering how Felipe's looked in practice this week and if you feel good about his chances to play, and maybe could there be some splitting of time between him and KJ this week?
Well, we're still, Felipe has practiced, and we're still working to see how he's feeling. He's done a nice job of practicing. He's not 100%. And so we're going to continue, obviously, the practice today, tomorrow. They'll give time for him to heal up a little bit more, and then we'll make a decision, game time, what we're going to do at the quarterback position. Is there potential for us to play both of them? The answer would be yes, assuming that Felipe can play. Obviously, if Felipe can't play, then that answer would be no.
Gotcha. And I'm wondering, what have you seen from the defensive response this week from the performance at Missouri, and if you're not able to play Grant Morgan, just how things will fall into place with the defense?
Well, Grant's a leader for us. Obviously, he has not been able to practice yet at this time as of yesterday. We have a lot of confidence in Hayden Henry and Andrew Parker and those guys. So they've been practicing this week, and so I think we'll be fine there, regardless of whether he plays or whether he doesn't. We lose a lot of tackles and lose leadership. You certainly don't want that to happen. But if he's not able to play, well then we've obviously recruited other linebackers, and we'll go in there, and I know they'll play hard. Defensively, I thought we were. It's kind of ironic. I thought that we were over the Missouri loss on Monday. We tried to put it behind us. I thought we had a very good practice, a spirited practice. However, yesterday, for whatever reason, I didn't feel like the practice was very good. Certainly, we addressed it with our coaching staff and our players, and I'm anticipating a very good practice today. But certainly, you can't let one loss turn into two. You can't let one win turn into a loss because you pat yourself on the back. So we've got to get over it. I think we have. We better, because we're playing a really, really good football team on Saturday.
Next is Gentry Estes of the Tennessee.
Yeah, hey, Coach, I wanted to ask you about one of your former players in Isaiah Wilson. What stands out to you most from your time with Isaiah? And have you kept in contact with him during what's been a little bit of a rough rookie season for him in the NFL?
Yeah, I've talked back and forth with Isaiah. Obviously, this season hasn't gone quite as well as it probably should have, and he's certainly had things to do with that himself. And but for me, he played more snaps than anybody else on the O-line. He's very tough, very consistent, and I think this is a little bit out of character. And I hope and pray that he's getting turned around, because I think he'll have a lot of value in the NFL, and he just got off to a rocky start, and he can fix that, and I believe he will.
When you have talked to him, I mean, what's kind of been your message given there's been a lot of transition for him in addition to COVID year and everything else that's kind of gone into this?
Well, I'd like to keep that between us, but the general conversation was, you're a grown man, you're making grown man wages, and you have responsibilities, and you certainly have to abide by all the responsibilities you have, and I'm sure that he'll get that done.
Thanks, Coach.
Mm-hmm.
Next is Brooks Cavina, the Advocate.
Hey, I was curious about, roster management. I've been talking to some of the other coaches about this going into this off season. I know it's a different year, and you get a chance to maybe ask some seniors to come back, but it kind of brings that idea of 85 only on a team and only 25 initial scholarships. I mean, now that you're kind of putting that all together, I'm wondering what your perspective is on, maybe how things can become better, and there's other things that need to change to maybe make it more able to build back up to 85.
Well, I think more than ever, coaches have to certainly communicate with each and every player on their football team. Some kids develop later than others, and we know we're in the SEC, so all of our players are good players on everybody's team. Some may have better players than others, but every one of them, if they've received a scholarship in the SEC out of high school, they were fine football players. That's just the bottom line. So, keep roster management. You have to keep your players. And to do that, you certainly have to have communication with them. You have to be honest with them on where they're sitting on the depth chart, where they can move up on the depth chart. Because the bottom line is you don't have to worry about roster management if you're not losing players. And so that's my perspective on it. Obviously, if the 25 rule, maybe you look into different every other year or something of that nature. You take that 25 to 28, whatever it may be. But I think every team in the nation is going to be under roster at 85 if you get the one-time transfer rule. And I'm not saying I'm for it or against it. I haven't thought about it enough yet. But I do know this: if you lose a player and you don't get to replace him, then your roster is going to certainly go down.
Thank you.
Next is Bob Hope, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette.
Hey, Sam. How you doing? Hey, in studying up on Alabama, I just wonder specifically what impressed you about Mac Jones.
He doesn't throw it to the other team. He manages the game. I mean, the guy is a winner. I mean, you can just feel it. You can feel it through the film. His team believes in him big time. He can make every throw. He can run when he needs to. He gets the ball out of his hands quickly. He runs the offense. There's a reason why he's in the finals for the Heisman. But to me, he's the epitome of a team leader, quarterback that everybody would like to have because of the way, and he seems like a really humble person and always giving everybody else the credit and things of that nature. To me, he's a perfect type personality and athlete that anybody would love to have as a quarterback on their team.
And obviously, I know you'd love to have Felipe back if possible Saturday, but considering how KJ played at Missouri, how much better does that make you feel if he's got to be the guy against Alabama?
Well, I had a lot of confidence in KJ going in, obviously, into the Missouri game because we had seen him practice with the ones the entire week. So we've always had KJ confidence. However, Felipe was playing very well also. So the decision's going to be made certainly on Felipe's health and how he is and can he play in the game. And then, yes, then he's going to play. And no, then KJ will play. And if Felipe plays, will KJ have an opportunity to play? Absolutely. So we'll just have to wait and continue to see. But does it make you feel any better? Probably not, because we felt like KJ was a really good player, and we knew what we have and know what we have going into the Alabama game with both quarterbacks, assuming Felipe can play.
Thanks.
Coach, we'll finish you up with Steve Moulton, WDBN.
Hey, Coach. Certainly hope you're doing well. I can't help that you've already mentioned in your comments about Alabama's offensive line and certainly Matt Jones, but what have you seen film study-wise on Devontae Smith, and what makes him so dynamic, Coach?
Well, he's fast. He can catch anything close and near to him. Man, he breaks out of routes. And then when he gets the ball in his hand, you better be close to him because he's hard to get on the ground. But he loves to play the game. You can tell it. And certainly a wonderful athlete. I love the way that he leads on tape. He brings energy to his team. And, is certainly an All-American guy. I've been very, very, very impressed with him.
Coach, just for full disclosure, I'm a Heisman Trophy voter. I'm curious, if you're a Heisman Trophy voter, who's the best player on Alabama, and who would you be voting for the Heisman?
Well, I'm not a Heisman Trophy. I don't think they ask a first-year O-line head coach to do it. But I'm not. If I was going to vote for the Heisman for Alabama, I'd vote their entire offensive line.
Fair enough. Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Coach, thank you.
Go Hogs.
Well, the first thing I'd like to do is pass along from, the Alabama nation, all the folks, our family, our condolences to Ray Perkins' family and friends. He served the University of Alabama with great class and integrity. He was a great coach and had a tremendous impact on the game. And he was a really, really good person and a really good friend. So, just like to say that to all the folks out there relative to our feelings about Coach Perkins and all that he did to impact, our game. We have a lot of respect for Arkansas as a team. They played very, very well. To lose, 3 games by a total of 7 points, and be in every game that they played, and played really, really well on both sides of the ball. I think Sam's done a great job there. Players really reflect his personality. Play hard, play with a lot of toughness, and this will be a tough game for us, and we got to focus on what we need to do to execute and play well. On the road again in the SEC.
Next up, we have Tom Murphy of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette.
Hey, Nick, you've got a full game now to study KJ Jefferson, so I'm wondering your assessment of him and Felipe, the 2 quarterbacks.
Well, I think both guys, do a really, really good job. He really played well against Missouri last week. Really executed the offense well. They didn't make a lot of changes in a lot of the things that they did, but they have a very, very, good concept of what they do on offense and do a really good job of executing it. And, the guy's athletic. He's a big, strong guy, and he threw the ball effectively, threw it well, and I thought he played really well. And I think Felipe has played really, really well all year long. He's got a good understanding of what he's doing. He's been effective as a passer. He's extended plays. He's, run when he needed to run. So, I think both guys are very capable, and both have done a really good job when they've gotten opportunities.
Sam said your offensive line, Sam on Monday said he thought your offensive line might be the best he'd ever seen. I'm wondering, the balance you have on offense, the explosiveness, speed, and Mack at quarterback, could this be among your best offenses you've had?
We don't ever make comparisons. We've had a lot of good players here, a lot of good offensive teams, a lot of good quarterbacks, a lot of good receivers, a lot of good runners. I think the thing that this group does is they play really well together, and they have tremendous balance, and every guy has done a really good job of doing what the coaches have asked them to do, and I think the consistency in their performance sort of reflects that, and the challenge is always, to keep it that way, and that's certainly something that will be important for us this week.
This is Chris Franklin of NewJersey.com.
Hey, Nick. Jalen Hurts will be starting for the Philadelphia Eagles on Sunday. Just wanted to know if you can get your reaction to the news, and also was there an early moment in which you know that he would be a good leader for your team?
Well, Jalen was always a great leader for our team, even when he didn't, first came here as a guy, trying to get on the field, and did it as a freshman. And if he didn't have the personality and the charisma that he has as a leader, I don't think he'd have been able to do that. And then to handle the situation that he was in, later in his career, showed tremendous class, and he's a great team guy, and I think players really, really respect that. And my reaction is I'm excited for him, happy for him and his family both. I know this is something that he worked hard for, and now he's got an opportunity, and we just hope and wish him very well that he can take advantage of that and do a good job for, his team.
Thank you.
Next is Bob Holt, the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette.
Hey, Coach, how you doing?
Good, Bob.
I think it was Mac Jones made his first career start against Arkansas last year. I guess he was a bit of an unknown quantity at that time. Well, what do you remember about that game and how he was able to build on that to become the player he is now?
Well, I think the experience that Matt got last year after Tua got hurt probably was very, very helpful in his growth and development and maturity as a player. I think, knowledge and experience is always beneficial to players, and what Matt got last year, I think, certainly made him realize what it takes to play, quarterback, at the highest level in college football, and, a very difficult league in the SEC, and I think that probably, made him, created an awareness for him in the off season of what he needed to do to prepare physically and mentally, for this season. So I think, all those things, contributed very positively to, Mac's development and how he's played this year.
Well, when he put up those numbers he did against Arkansas, which obviously, wasn't playing real well last year, but do you remember thinking, wow, this guy could be our starter moving forward,
Well, I always had confidence in Mac. He had the opportunity to play behind a couple really good players here, and I think he learned a lot and took advantage of that. And I think, Mac is a great story to me to, spend 3 years, developing as a player behind, Tua, Jalen Hurts, and people like that, and took advantage of every rep in terms of how it enhanced his development, and was willing to have the patience and persistence to sort of, wait his turn and then be ready to take advantage of it when it came. And I think that's almost something that's a little bit unique for, college players now, but, Mac epitomizes it really in terms of how he developed through his career.
Thanks.
Next is Gene Fernetti of the Florida Times Union.
Hey, Coach. There have been more SEC games this year that have reached the 75-point combined threshold than in any other year. How much of that do you just attribute to, having some very high-powered offenses in the league, but also possibly this unusual year putting defenses a little bit behind the eight ball early on?
Well, I think it's probably a combination of both. I think there are some really good offenses. I think there's some really good quarterbacks. I think, people are doing a really good job offensively, taking advantage of, rules of RPOs, blocking downfield on pass plays, But I also think that just our experience here over the summer when we weren't allowed to work with our players, offensive players could go out and actually run plays on air, run pass patterns on air, develop timing and do things. But, defensive players have to react to something somebody does on offense, and we can have no face-to-face, contact with players all through the summer. I think it had a greater impact on the defensive players than it did the offensive players.
Thank you.
That's a bit of Brooks Cavina, the Advocate.
This season with roster management, I'm wondering how different it is. With even the ability to re-recruit some seniors who might normally have, no eligibility left, and knowing that you only have 85 scholarships to have on your team. So I'm curious how you approach that.
Well, I haven't really talked to our seniors, yet about anybody who wants to come back. We would welcome anybody that would want to come back. We have quite a few juniors who may go out for the draft. So this is something that, I've told the players that after we play on December 19th, we'll spend some time addressing it before we move on in whatever direction that we move on in from there. So it's something that I have not addressed. I've thought about it a lot, but I've not addressed it with the players or the team. But I could see some benefit for some of the players to come back, and I could see that it could cause some roster management problems relative to how many players you recruit.
Yeah, I've talked to the other coaches on this conference, and it seems like everybody seems to be in a different spot. Some are playing with fewer than 85 others, and I know recently it kind of got more rigid with how you can only get 25 in 1 year and such. Are there still things to work through, and what do you think could benefit teams in the future?
Well, I think that a couple things with roster management. If we're going to make it so guys can transfer whenever they want, I think we've already done that with graduates, guys that graduate. I think you ought to get, if you have a guy that graduates, you've done your sort of job with the player. He's developed in your program. He's got another year of eligibility. He graduated from school. If he chooses to go someplace else, you ought to be able to replace that initial. I think with more and more players going out early for the draft, some kind of way, if those players leave school early in good standing academically, maybe you should be able to replace those so that you can get to the 85 number. And I think, teams that have good players, like the teams in our league, the top teams in our league, they're probably going to be more susceptible to losing players than, maybe some other teams. So, and I do think it's going to be difficult for some of us to get to 85 if we don't get some relief, some kind of way on some of those things.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you.
That's all of our time. Thank you. Thank you for your words about Cooper.